وجعل الظلمات والنور وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد النور وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. أما بعد. So first and foremost, thank you very much to Noor-UL-Haram and to Wim for having me back. I love these types of gatherings. They're very sincere and I love the people here. A lot of familiar faces. So last time I talked about Tawbah, the person that realized that he needed to change his life. So he made Tawbah and he asked Allah Ta'ala for forgiveness. And verily Allah is Ghafur Rahim. But now he does not want to go back to that type of life. He wants to now dress himself with a life of righteousness. So I would say that the theme of tonight can be found in a saying by a wonderful Moroccan scholar, rahimahullah ta'ala, who said, "Fear Allah Ta'ala in open and in secret, and desist from matters that cause one to be barred, for seeking divine help without readiness is like traveling without provision." And this is very much why I think it's fitting that the name of tonight's lecture is on preparing for the journey. Because really, the life of righteousness and this life in general is a journey. And life is interesting, the length of it. Because actually, it could be the dunya as we know it could be the shortest time in the different stages of our life. Right? So you were before this world thousands of years as a soul, right? Or longer. Then after you pass away from this life, so maybe if you're lucky, 120 max, more or less nowadays, right? And then after you're in barzakh, right? The barzakh world. So depending on how long Yawm al-Qiyamah is, you could be in that place longer than your life here. And then of course, there's Yawm al-Qiyamah that we know is 50,000 sana in Surah Al-Ma'arij. And then there's eternity. So very much this world is the shortest. So it would be foolish for someone to abandon and forsake the later stages of those lives for this short one. Now, having said that, it isn't that short either, right? It is a bit of a marathon. So the way that we approach it, the way that we walk it, the journey that we take has to be one of wisdom, has to be one of insight, has to be one of balance, and we really need to put our trust in Allah Ta'ala. We should live as if we will die tomorrow, but we should prepare as if we will live forever. Right? So trying to keep those two kind of almost contradictory statements in your mind at the same time, or notions, is something that we should do. So I just wanted to preface my talk by saying that I think that this stage, sorry, I hate microphones, this stage is maybe encompassed, or the main pillars of this stage are three. There are three. The first one is knowledge. Because remember, I said that this journey is a journey of wisdom, amongst other things. So first we need ilm. Number two, balance. Balance. And number three is justice. So hopefully we can walk away having touched a little bit on knowledge, balance and wisdom, and justice, which are really perhaps even year-long courses on their own merit. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 177, and a lot of my verses I'm just going to say in English. If you want Arabic, the leaves, then I can give you afterwards. Allah Ta'ala says, which may mean, it is not righteousness that ye turn your faces towards the east or the west, but it is righteousness to believe in Allah and the last day, and the angels, and the book, and the messengers, to spend of your substance out of love for Him, for your kin, for orphans, for the needy, for the wayfarer, and for those who ask. And for those who ask, and for the ransom of slaves, to be steadfast in prayer and practice, regular charity, to fulfill the contracts which ye have made, to be firm and patient in pain and adversity and throughout all periods of panic. Such are the people of truth, the muttaqun, the people of taqwa, or the Allah-fearing. But what I did was I went back through the verse and I just looked for keywords. Because it's a long description, it's hard to sometimes memorize. So, just to look for keywords. So first one is, but it is righteous to believe in Allah and the last day, etc. So first one is, you have to have iman, proper iman. And this actually lends itself to the first topic which we will talk about, which is knowledge. Belief. Then it says, after a bit, to spend of your substance. So generosity, giving. And to spend properly would also to realize who is the one giving you the tawfiq and who is giving you the risk to spend. To reflect upon that as well. To spend out of your substance out of love for Him, for Allah Ta'ala. You must have love. As one of our teachers says, no love, no deen. This deen is a deen of love. It goes on, then it says, be steadfast in prayer and practice regular charity. So here are obligations Allah Ta'ala put on you. So to recap, belief, generosity, love, upholding the rights of Allah Ta'ala, to fulfill the contracts which you have made, to uphold the rights of your fellow creations, to be firm and patient, sabr. Such are the people of truth. So truthfulness and Allah-fearingness. So those main ideas are what makes righteousness. Now it's interesting, it says at the end, such are the people of truth, the muttaqun, the Allah-fearing. So actually it starts with righteousness, which shows what? That righteousness is a precondition of taqwa. That righteousness is subsumed in the meaning of taqwa. That was just my own humble reflection. So the question is, if righteousness is subsumed under the definition of taqwa, what is taqwa? And the easiest and most general and encompassing definition I think there is to learn and to live the Quranic teachings and the authentic prophetic sunnah. By definition, righteousness is already included. So taqwa is learning and living the Quran and the authentic prophetic sunnah. Which brings us to our first point, knowledge, to learn. So the question is, why do I have to learn the deen? I would say more from a spiritual perspective, to learn is to love, or to love is to learn. How can you claim love for somebody or for something, as is mentioned in the verse? Remember, out of love for Him. How can you claim love for Allah Ta'ala or for His Prophet and not know about them? Sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi. How can you claim true, complete love for this religion and not care about it? By definition, if you love something and you have a burning desire for it, you want to learn everything about it. You want to learn everything about it. And seeking knowledge is something that we are told to do in the Quran, where فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Know that there is no God but Allah. It doesn't say utter. It doesn't say just repeat. It doesn't say mildly, somewhat believe and say it occasionally. It says know. Have certainty in a sense. Know that there is no God but Allah. Right? The other reason we ought to seek knowledge is because our worship, as we know it, is only accepted on the basis of you know the one that you're worshipping. right? If somebody thinks, which is contrary to the truth, that God is like His creation, right? Or thinks that He is light, which is itself a creation, or thinks that He's a mass, all of these are foreign concepts outside of Islam. They are not Islamic concepts. So if he believes that Allah is like His creation, then his worship is not accepted at the very least. And of course these are also kufri beliefs. So this is the power of knowledge, especially when it comes to your relationship with Allah Ta'ala, because at a fundamental basis, your belief and your worship and everything you do for Him, it has to be done in a way pleasing to Him. It has to be done in accordance with truth. Right? Otherwise, you just spent a lot of energy. Secondly, is because now as a person who wants to walk the path of righteousness, he has to know what are the hukuk of Allah, what are His rights, Jalla Jalal, and what are the rights of His creation. Because there is no walking this path doing mass collateral damage. The whole point of this being part 2 is that we've left violating the rights of Allah Ta'ala. We've left, inshallah, violating the rights of our fellow creation. That was the tawbah part. That was the abandoning it. Now we have to make sure that we never fall into them again by His permission, subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah grant us afiyah. And again, just on a side note, before I continue, I do not talk from a place of having arrived. Right? This is something that I myself am working on. Because if I said I'm perfect, I'll just be a hypocrite. So I'm not righteous, but I also don't want to be a hypocrite. So I hope that this is an opportunity for us all together as brothers and as sisters to be able to be there for one another and support one another on this journey, and to be there as companions on the path, on the journey, and help us navigate the different obstacles, inshallah ta'ala. The third main reason, if I'm on number 3, is because not everybody, but it is common that somebody who returns to righteousness or begins practicing for the first time, that shaitan, the curse, comes to them and tries to confuse them, and tries to make the religion hard on them, and tries to abuse them by way of waswasa. And a lot of the time, not all of it, but I would say predominantly, the wasawas that come has to do with 3 things. Purification, matters of keeping pure and wudu and ghusl, etc. The intention, and the third is shirki, kufri beliefs, or wasawas, or statements, etc. So when you have knowledge in your obligatory fiqh, for example, if you study under a qualified teacher, within a short amount of time you should already be learning, in a sense, legal maxims, which, if you learn properly, removes 99.9% of these wasawas about purification and niyyah. Right? And to let those wasawas foster is extremely detrimental. I know of quite a few people who suffered a lot, and even so extreme as touching an elevator button and then having a doubt that maybe somebody who ate pork for lunch also touched the button that he now touched. Now he has to wash, or he thinks he has to wash 7 times before he prays, because then his prayer is going to be invalid. And this is just shaitan abusing him. Because if you studied fiqh for a couple hours, you would know that all of this is just illusion. You don't have to do all these things. And actually, as Sheikh Ninawi says, ignorance is our greatest enemy. Because look at this person who's struggling so hard, thinking he's doing the right thing by constantly washing, by constantly making this religion hard on himself, by constantly being depressed with his state, etc. He's thinking he's doing the right thing, but he's actually not doing what Allah Ta'ala wants of him. Right? That's the danger of ignorance, to actually believe or do something that you think is right, but is actually wrong. And then, of course, studying Aqidah would help with the kufri, shirki thoughts, etc. So my appeal to you is, as somebody who wants to become a person of righteousness, a person who walks the path, but not only walks the path, but walks it comfortably and with ease, you have to learn the deen. You have to learn the deen. Otherwise, it could be that everything you're doing, all the charity you're giving, all the salah that you're praying, all the dhikr that you're doing, all the whatever masjid building could be for naught. And we ask Allah for protection. The second point is balance. Even myself, after I converted, and I know that other people that, whether they returned to to trying to live an upright life, etc., that they go from one extreme to the other. One moment they're not praying, the next moment they're praying 4 hours during the night, fasting every single day. You know what I'm talking about. Removing pictures from the walls, doing all of these types of things and scaring their family members who think that, now they've become extremists, etc. But there's actually a fundamental principle when it comes to this. Anything that is extreme is not of the sunnah. Extremism comes from abandoning the sunnah. Right? That's why it's a bit silly when people say, these extremists are orthodox Muslims. And I'll just say, no, the person who's actually orthodox, the person who's actually steadfast on the Quran and the authentic prophetic sunnah is by no ways extreme. These people are extreme because they've abandoned the Quranic teachings and the prophetic teachings. Allah Ta'ala says in a paraphrased, translated meaning in Surah Al-Baqarah, thus we have made for you an ummah, justly balanced, or a middle nation. And what's interesting about that is in Surah Al-Baqarah, that's exactly the middle ayah. Surah Al-Baqarah is the ayah that says we have made you a middle nation. Right? So then that is a great sign. Thus we have made you an ummah justly balanced, or middle nation, that ye may be witnesses over the nations, and the messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a witness over yourselves, and the verse goes on. And balance, I would say, is part of the wisdom of this journey. Right? Often, someone goes from no practicing to what I said before, and after not being able to uphold that for more than 4 days, he gets discouraged. And he says, maybe Allah didn't accept my tawbah, maybe Allah's not giving me tawfiq, maybe Allah doesn't want me, etc., etc., and then he returns to no practice. Right? And this is because his development, his transition wasn't one done holistically, it was not one done under guidance, it was not one done really with balance. Right? Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a hadith that's paraphrased, translated meaning, "O Abdullah, have I not been informed that you fast all the day and stand in prayer all night?" I said, "Yes, O Allah's Messenger." He said, "Do not do that. Observe the fast sometimes, and also leave them, that is the fast, at other times. Stand up for prayer at night, and also sleep at night. Your body has a right over you, your eyes have a right over you, and your wife has a right over you." Right? This is the prophetic counsel. Right? And it's definitely one of balance, and of toleration, and of healthiness. Right? And this is my own, wrong opinion, but the person who goes to the extreme of doing all these supererogatory acts of worship and completely renouncing the dunya, etc., then he can't keep that up for more than 3 hours, so then he returns back to non-practicing. I think hidden in that is a spiritual illness, because Ibn Ata'illah as-Sikandari rahimahullah ta'ala says in his hikam, the first one, a sign, paraphrase, a sign that you have put your hope in your deeds and not in your Lord is a loss of hope when a downfall occurs. Which is an important thing that we should keep in mind throughout this process of life, really, is that we are human. The station of tawbah, although we mentioned it as the first class, etc., is something that continues. And we're human and we make mistakes, and eventually, we're bound to make a mistake, billah. But the key is that when that mistake happens, did you put your hope in the deeds, or did you put your hope in your Lord? So the person that makes a mistake and slips and then reverts completely back to non-practicing, for me it's a sign that he put all his hope in the amal and not in Allah. He put his hope in the creation and he did not put his hope in the Creator. Right? But it doesn't mean that we abandon now our actions. Right? It's just our Lord commanded us to do our actions and to perfect our actions, but never put your hope in them. They're created. We put our hope in Allah Ta'ala. Because that sickness also is compounded on the idea, or it's built on the idea, that Allah gives, which is contrary to the truth, like a human being. Only if you do it according to Him, then He'll give you. Right? Maybe we function like that. If you disobey me or if you anger me, then I won't give you money, etc. But that's actually fundamentally wrong, because you're likening Allah's giving to the giving of the creation. Allah does not give you based on your actions. Allah gives you based out of His generosity. But He commanded you to do the actions, and He commanded you to perfect them. And really, doing them is a sign of what's on the inside. What you say and what you do is just a mirror of your heart. So that was the second pillar. Does anybody have questions or continue? The third one now is very important. Well, they're all important, but the third one is justice. Now, justice can be looked at through many different lenses. It can be looked at governmental justice, societal justice, etc. Justice through different perspectives and prisms. But we're concerned with justice in the deen. So there's two types of... So I would say justice is fulfilling rights of Allah Jalla Jalal and of our fellow creations. Right? Therefore, to not uphold rights and to violate rights would be the opposite of justice, which would be wrong. Right? Which would be wrong. For example, Allah Ta'ala says, which may mean, so we took each one in his sin. Of them was he whom we sent a hurricane, and of them was he who was overtaken by the awful cry, and of them was he whom we caused the earth to swallow, and of them was he who we drowned. It was not Allah to wrong them, but they wronged themselves. So it begins mentioning, we took each one in his sin. Finishes by saying, they wronged themselves. Sinning equals wronging. And really sinning is what? Violating the rights of Allah Ta'ala and violating the rights of your fellow creation. Right? So on this note, if you can remember just this maxim, just this idea, I think it will save you a lot of trouble in this world and in the next. It's actually a maxim that, fiqh, the laws in Islam, right? So there's a science called usul fiqh, the foundation of them. So basically how the scholars, the methodology in which the scholars use to deduce rulings from the Quran and the authentic Sunnah, that's where we get our fiqh rulings from, right? They have a maxim that says, translated, removal of harm takes precedence over the attainment of good. I'll say it again. Removal of harm takes precedence over the attainment of good. Now if we just take that and we just apply it now to this spiritual journey that we're going to go through, inshallah ta'ala, what this means is, removal of harm is what? Not violating the rights of Allah and not violating the rights of your fellow creation. Attainment of good, in this case, if we look at it this way, would be what? The mustahabat, the supererogatory things, not the obligatory, but the supererogatory things, and removing the things that are makruh, disliked. But we know that something that you do that's mustahab is you're rewarded for doing it, but you're not punished if you leave it. So that's not really the main priority right now as we're trying to build this life, right? And makruh things are things that you're not punished if you do them, but if you leave them for the sake of Allah Ta'ala, then you're obviously rewarded. But again, that's really not necessarily the priority at the moment. The priority is to do the obligations and to remove and to stay away from and ensure protection against the forbidden things. Removal of harm takes precedence over the attainment of good. And you'd be surprised actually how many people do harm or don't not do harm, and meanwhile, as they're just destroying people's lives and doing immense collateral damage, even to themselves, they're still trying to attain good. Right? Example, well, damage to yourself would be one that prays Taraweeh and then misses Fajr. How many people fall into that one? Right? In Ramadan, they're praying Taraweeh 2 and then 3 hours, then he's doing Qiyam al-Layl and then Witr and and then he falls asleep and misses Fajr. Then he goes to work where he made a contract with his employer and doesn't do his job that he made a contract saying that he would do. He violated Allah's right and now he violated the right of his creation. Right? And what's the nature of somebody that does these types of things? On Yawm al-Qiyamah, yeah, sure, great, you have an immense pile of good deeds, you pray Taraweeh, etc. But now you've wronged so many people that you have to take and you have to give. Take, give, take, give. At the end you're going to look, and if you're lucky, you have things left. If you're not lucky, then you're bankrupt. And for the person who can't give anymore because now they're bankrupt, instead of him giving, he takes on the evil burden of other people. Right? This is this may happen for somebody who completely ignores the rights of Allah Ta'ala and our fellow creations, but then chases doing the supererogatory things. Right? Another example, which is maybe a bit distasteful. But I think it makes actually an excellent image in your mind, or an excellent idea, which I got from a scholar, is, so aura, like what you have to cover, right? Generally from belly button to knees, the differences of opinion, etc. So that's what you have to cover. Now imagine you had no clothing on, you were naked. You only have one piece of cloth. What are you going to do? Cover your aura, that's the obligation, you need to cover it. But the person that chases the supererogatory acts but is doing all this collateral damage is like the person who, instead of covering his private parts, took the cloth and decided to wrap a turban. That's what it's like. And you look at him and you say, you don't understand, isn't it? You just don't understand, you've missed the whole point. And this is very much the person that is doing these types of things, but violating the laws of Allah Ta'ala, violating the laws of His creation, etc. And we know a lot of these people. People that, grow a big beard and try to dress traditionally and make sure that they shorten their pants. And, he will, in the middle of Union Station, stop, sit down, drink his water because, he thinks it's the sunnah to drink sitting. And he'll do all of these types of things, but then what? You cannot trust him in business. He's a snake in business. He goes home and he beats his wife. He does not pray Fajr. He doesn't give zakat because he's stingy. He'd rather invest it in his stocks. Right? But he's walking around like this. He's missed the whole complete point of piety. According to the Quran, remember the first thing we started with? So that is something that I think we all need to work on. And particularly, the person that wants to develop a life of righteousness, actually, more likely than not, the rights of Allah Ta'ala, he actually tries to fulfill. I'll give him that. He actually tries to fulfill them. But the rights of his fellow creations, he abandons. He abandons. Lies, cheats, backbites, eats the flesh of his brother, slanders him, calls him names. Uses interest on his brother. Right? Hurts him. Hurts his feelings. Breaks his heart. Does all of these types of things. But what's interestingly enough is in the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, there's a hadith that tells us 3 signs of the hypocrite. إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذَبَ. If he speaks, he lies. وَإِذَا وَعَدَ أَخْلَفَ. When he promises, he breaks his trust. And when he's entrusted, when he promises, he breaks his promise. And when he's entrusted with something, he betrays the trust or acts treacherously. Look at the 3 signs in this hadith. Did they have to do anything with the rights of Allah? Did it say this? The signs of the hypocrite are 3. He doesn't have a beard, doesn't wear a kufi, and doesn't wear a thobe. Was it he doesn't pray in jama'ah, doesn't have big tasbih made from rosewood, and has a nice Yemeni shawl? No, has to do with the fellow creation. Also, what's interesting to look at is the bay'ah that a group of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gave. There's a hadith, but I'm just going to say the part of the actual hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, translated and paraphrased, "Swear allegiance to me for not to join anything in the worship along with Allah." So that, of course, is the biggest dhulm. That is the biggest injustice, shirk, isn't it? Number 2, not to steal, right of the creation. Not to commit illegal sexual intercourse, involves fellow creation. Not to kill your children, rights of fellow creation. Not to accuse an innocent person, rights of fellow creation. Not to be disobedient in order to do good, could involve rights of the fellow creation. The Prophet ﷺ said, which may mean, whoever among you fulfills his pledge will be rewarded by Allah, and whoever indulges in any one of them, except the ascription of partners to Allah in the bracket, and gets punished in this world, that punishment will be an expiation for that sin. And if one indulges in any of them and Allah conceals the sin, it is up to him to forgive or to punish him in the hereafter. Right? The hadith continues a little bit. But notice that even the bay'ah to the best of creation, Sayyid al-Khalq wa Habib al-Haq, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallama, look how many had to do with the rights of your fellow creation. unfortunately, nowadays, even in the circles of tasawwuf, circles of people of spirituality, they don't have a clue what righteousness is anymore. They've lost it. They've lost it. There is no righteousness if you break people's hearts. There is no righteousness if you violate anybody's rights. There is no righteousness if you violate the right of Allah Ta'ala. I don't care how many burdas you sing. If you're not praying your 5 daily prayers and giving zakat and being a good person, you're in trouble. And we ask Allah for protection and for afiyah. But that wasn't to scare anybody. But it's a bit of a wake-up call, right? Even when you ask somebody, give me a description of a wali of Allah. Right? Well, he has to have beard at least to third button here. And he has to be a bit heavy set. And he has to wear a thobe, a white thobe. And his misbah cannot be plastic, it has to be real wood. And he has to wear a couple rings. And so this is all just false, this is all illusionary. The wali of Allah can be someone clean shaven, wears a jacket, drives a Ferrari, because dunya isn't in his heart, it's in his pocket, and goes and he's good to people. That could be the wali of Allah. Right? And what's amazing is wilaya, friendship with Allah Ta'ala, is something hidden. You can never know, right? And that's why it's important to treat everybody you come in contact with as if they were Sayyidina Khidr, and treat every night as if it was Laylatul Qadr. Right? That is something that we should be doing. But my whole goal of this evening was to make it clear to you that, number one, we have to, if you really want to be a person of righteousness, and I ask Allah to make me one of them, because I'm the worst person here, but if we want to be people of righteousness, we have to learn the deen. Right? There's fard, kifaya, knowledge, and fard ayn, knowledge. Fard kifaya is knowledge, or even fard kifaya just in general means obligation. There's communal obligations such that if a person were to fulfill them, then the community is all safe from punishment. Right? But then there's also fard ayn. You have to, every believer has to do it. And he's not safe from punishment. Right? He has to do it. And fard ayn knowledge would be basic fiqh. How do I make wudu? How do I make ghusl properly? What happens if I'm in a place where I don't have water and I need to do tayammum? Right? What happens if I miss a sajda and I get confused, or I miss a tashahud? How do I recompense in my salah? How do I do these things? Learn. Again, Allah is incomprehensible. You cannot attain full knowledge of Him, of course, because He's limitless and we're limited, right? But at the same time, there is knowledge that we have to learn about Him, that He's unlike the creation, etc., right? True Islamic monotheism, Tawheed. We also have to learn about the different portions of imaniyat. What does it mean to believe in the angels? What does it mean to believe in the books, right? Etc. What do we have to believe about the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam and all the Nabiyeen, right? And a part of that is the root or the foundation. It's the root of your tree. If you want to make righteousness into a tree, knowledge for sure is part of the roots. For sure, 100%. Knowledge isn't up here. Knowledge is what holds you, what grounds you into the ground, makes you solid, and it's what gives you proper nourishment. Because then you can definitely know how to navigate situations properly, right? Then I would say the trunk, right, is wisdom, balance, and preparation, right? You have to grow slowly but surely and healthily in a vertical way, right? The person that just goes from one extreme to another, vacillates, is like just a tree's trunk that's going like this, it's just going to get blown over, right? Slowly and steadily build, and then the fruits of righteousness will be reaped, right? That's the whole point. Otherwise, to attempt to live a life of righteousness while harming people, being a walking shaitan, violating the rights of Allah, not having kufri or wrong beliefs about Allah Ta'ala and His Prophet Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. All of these things, it's like you're yearning, you're watering the seed of your journey with urine. You're not going to get anywhere. You're going to rot in the ground, right? So we have to make sure that we're watering it with pure water, and we ask Allah for afiyah and taysir. We ask Allah Ta'ala to grant us knowledge of this deen, knowledge that we implement in every moment of our lives. Allah Ta'ala, as from what I understand, ilm is the only dua that we seek increase in. Zidni. Right? So we ask Allah for immense knowledge of this religion. Knowledge that is built on love. Knowledge that leads to higher levels of love. We ask Allah Ta'ala for the ability to die without ever having been tempted back to sin. We ask Allah Ta'ala for the ability to fulfill all of His rights, Jalla Jalaluhu, and the rights of all of our fellow creations. And we ask Allah Ta'ala for the ability to walk in the beautiful, noble, illuminated, balanced footsteps of Rasulullah Sallallahu Ta'ala alayhi ya Sayyidi ya Rasulullah. And we just ask Allah to be the people that He is pleased with. Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Husn al-Khatima, which we ask Allah for, and to be the people that Allah is well pleased with. Right? وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم الحمد لله رب العالمين.
عفوك إني للنور مدت يداي